This time on the laboratory, we are going to be working on a Mr. Christmas World's Fair biplane ride. It's hard to tell from what it looks like on the top, so I'm going to flip this thing sideways. And it's basically a swinging carousel that has 5 biplanes that come out. The owner said the music works, but there's no lights and no rotation. So I have not tried it myself. I usually save that for the camera so y'all can see it too. I have the power source ready, and it's the original one. It's the sticker that says World's Fair biplane ride. It's 6 volts. This says 8 volts. And click, plug it in, and now the lights work a little bit. They were flashing. Okay. Well, the buttons work, but we don't have any motion and the lights are flickering badly. And I shouldn't be able to rotate this like I can. I think it's got a broken gear or a bad motor or a combination of the two. Like most Mr. Christmas, these pop off the top. This one's not really held on. When I took it out of the box, it was sitting like this, so I kind of knew it probably wasn't in all the way, so I just pushed it flat. So first thing you want to do is pop this thing off, which is the top, and in the center is a screw. It's a number 2 Phillips. Grab the base. And let's start taking this apart and seeing what is going on. Now, I'm going to assume, based on this style, that the mechanism that drives it is right here in the center area. I could be wrong. We're going to find out here in just a moment. And small screwdriver to pop the canopy. No, it's on the top. I was wrong. Just going to take a look at it real quick, see what I can see. I see the micro switch is not engaged onto the gear. It has shifted off to the side. Yeah, so that's no good. Belt looks okay. So what I'm looking at is right in here. You'll see this black micro switch, and this is a cam. This cam is supposed to push that micro switch. It's actually next to it. So the micro switch is to reset it. It's not going to reset if it's not pushing on anything. So something has shifted. It's not the circuit board. It's pretty solid. So let's plug it back in and see if anything's actually moving up top. This does not have a volume. Oh no, there it is. I'm going to turn the volume off. And the motor's going out. I don't know if you can hear it. I'm going to try and bring it closer to the camera. Hear that clicking sound? And then the biplanes are barely moving. Now this plate is supposed to move up and down to move the planes in and out. But it can't do that because this cam isn't turning. This cam right here is what rotates the planes. Or, swings the planes out. So let's take this next stage apart. I don't think this disc comes out without taking the center off. No. So there's some screws. Well, let's see, there is 3 screws that take this upper part off. I don't see anything coming from the bottom though. Let's take a look at the top here. A smaller screwdriver. Now we're going to have to remove this big nut like always. I don't have my small pliers at hand, so I'm just going to see if I can get it to break free. There we go. You can use smaller pliers, I just don't have them with me at this moment, so use what you got. So there's the nut. And the washer. And now I'm going to see about sliding this up. Like that. I'm going to check the bottom real quick to see if there's a plug. Some of these, they put a plug on these center wires because there's some slack in this wire. So I'm going to check this bottom. There's a plug, which I just popped out. And now I'm going to see if there's a disconnect in here so we can actually pull this all the way apart. Some of the units I've come across have had a disconnect shoved in the bottom, some haven't. But since there's a lot of wire balled up in the center, I want to check. And maybe we'll get lucky. No disconnect, it's just all balled up. But now that I've undone the ball, I might be able to pull this up higher. There we go, like so. Looks like it's missing a spring on these return pins. These metal pins right here that the guide on, there's these itty bitty hairline springs, and there's two. This third one doesn't have a spring. Interesting. Set this back down. There we go. What those little springs do is they push this plate back up. Next thing, we're going to pull the band off. And there's one more screw I didn't see under the wires. Pull that screw out. And that's all the big screws. The motor is screwed to this top plate. And there's a really small screw right here, which for some reason, a lot of Mr. Christmas have these. I don't know if this is an alignment screw or a safety screw, but you got to remove this itty bitty screw as well. Now I'm going to try and carefully take it apart without throwing gears everywhere. Need to pull some of this wire up and will it lift. Now it doesn't lift all the way because it's still got the wires going through it from the motor as well as the power. And now I want to check these gears out and then find out why we lost the alignment on this cam. I can see where the cam walked on the shaft. I don't know why it walked. We got goop. The lubrication grease is all over this itty bitty little micro switch. That's why it walked. You can see that big old crack. That gear is split. So the shaft is walking back and forth because this gear isn't intact. So I'm going to take a look at the next gear. That one looks okay. These two gears are okay. And these two gears are okay. So I lost a big gear here. But that motor also sounds horrible, so we're going to check that. I'm also going to check this worm gear. The worm gear is got a lot of wear on it. I'm also going to pull out this motor. Motor, like always, has two small screws holding it in. Apparently the motor screws are stuck. They're stripped. Alright, so that's going to pose a small issue, but I'll deal with that in a moment. I want to get this worm gear out. I'm just using these as a pry tool to try and pry the pulley off, which isn't working. There we go. So pulley's off. This might be hard to see. This is really jagged and chewed up. So it looks like it's going to need a worm gear and a standard gear right here at the moment. Alright, and now that I have it out, and I couldn't see it before, the reason the cam is off centered, it has this little tooth. You see a little tooth right there? So when this rotates, this is pushing this disc down, up, down, up. This tooth is what hits this micro switch. So this will continue to rotate the 180 degrees from where it was sitting when I opened it, but a full 360 to flip this micro switch, which probably tells it that it's in its down position and that the airplanes aren't sticking out like that. Makes it really hard to store. So from what I can tell, it's missing a spring, which is going to kind of be difficult to find something similar because it's a very thin, very light spring. It's got two broken gears and possibly a bad motor. So now that we're not hooked up to any broken gearbox, as you can see, she spun just fine. And that's because down in this hub is another motor, which is what I was thinking, which apparently is working perfectly. That one is a harder one to get to, but we'll see. We'll see what we can do to show you the one that's down inside. This motor was spinning, and it was actually working. I'm not sure if it was just stuck or if it's actually on its way out. I think it's on its way out. I'll see what I have for motors. But to get to this one down inside the center, and I'm going to show you how to do it if I didn't on the previous one, it's a little bit more difficult, and we'll go through the process I do it when I've done it in the past. First thing I'm going to do is get the soldering iron warmed up. There are 4 wires right here. There is a red, black, a white, and a white. Now, because it has 2 of the same color wires, what I'm going to do, I'm going to mark one of the 2 white wires with a marker. And know that that green wire is the outer wire. And then, like I always recommend, take a picture. Because memory, it fades. Take a picture. Like so. I must desolder these 4 wires. A lot of times on solder you have to get new solder on it for it to work, so you can get good heat transfer. So I'm going to put a little bit of solder on each one, and then I'm going to reheat it and pull them off. That's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, if you don't have a soldering iron and you can't do that, you can cut the wire back a little bit so you can match the colors. Again, I would mark the 2 of the same, and then you can splice them back together with either small butt connectors or twist them with a little heat shrink. There's several different ways to reattach the wires, but soldering just makes it cleaner. So we're going to pull off the cap, and I'm going to pull off the 2 springs that are in here, and I'm going to set this out of the way. Now you can see there's a wire that comes up here for the lights. There's a black and a red, and there's a groove right here, and if you look, there's a couple of screws. There's 4, and that's how you remove the top of this canopy. These screws are nice and stiff. There we go. That's 1. I had the same problem with the last one I did. The screws, only got like 2 of them out, and the other 2 I had to take out to the shop and use an easy out on. I might have to do it with 3 of these. Let's try a different. That one doesn't come close. Nope. Yeah, it's amazing how tough plastic can be. All right, well, we're gonna have to pause for a moment. I'm gonna go try and find my small easy outs again and see if I can get these to break free. I'm out of screwdrivers. Try them all. The other ride I did like this, the same problem. Only 2 of them came out. The other 2 I had to grind out with easy outs. And then I just replaced them with some random hobby screws I found that were about the same diameter. The heads aren't too big of a deal, so if they have the round head or the tapered head, they're not in the way of anything in here. There's nothing that's going to really impede it. This plate doesn't go all the way down to hit the top of the screw heads. So a pan head, if you find a replacement such as these, would work fine. Actually, here's the other spring. It must have fallen out. So anyhow, I'm going to go get those 3 screws out, and we'll be right back. Alright, I'm back. I got all 4 screws out without breaking them. I found a different taper screwdriver I had outside in my shop where it grabbed, and with a lot of pressure I got them to release. So I didn't have to drill them out or anything. So that separates the top from the center piece, but you can't pull it off because you notice this red wire, the black wire. So same thing. You have to desolder them from over here. These 2 wires are your lights, and you got to remember which wire goes where. So again, take a picture, but the outer track is, well, the inner track technically. The inner track is negative, and the outer track closest to the edge is positive. So we do that, and we can lift off the top where the planes are, and I'm going to try and show you. There's the drive gear right there. It's the big one that's screwed onto this piece. I'm going to try and set the biplanes down so they'll stand up. And then there is your second motor assembly. And you can't pull this off because this is onto the center shaft. To do that, you'd have to pull the nut out of the bottom and pull all these wires through. But this motor, we're going to take a look at it, is very similar. It has the 3 screws, and then there's a small transmission, and it's clear, so you can see through it. It doesn't look bad. Maybe that worm gear is wearing. I'm going to plug it in so the gears can rotate so I can get a full view of them. I don't know if you can see, but that gear is spinning. It's nice and quiet. And yeah, they're not cracked. They're engaging perfectly. Belt spinning. That little motor sounds beautiful. It's making no noise. When you plug it back in, make sure none of these wires are touching. But that's how you access the center. So, break the 4 screws out, or unscrew them, and then desolder your wires, and you can pull the top off if you lose your rotation. This is the rotator, and then the motor on the top, right here, is the one that makes it go in and out, or up and down on the plate. And then on the very bottom, you can see in there, there's some copper fingers there. That's the rotor assembly. That assembly has the fingers that, when this spins, allows it to send power up these wires. As you can see how I can spin it by lifting it so it's not engaged. So these would get all wrapped up in a big circle. So your rotor is in the bottom. So if your lights aren't working, your rotor might be dirty, and you're going to have to do a little disassembly. You're going to have to get this so it lifts up so you can clean it, or completely out by removing the nut that's way down inside that hole with all these wires. The easiest way to do it is literally to pull all these wires out, take the nut off, disassemble it, put the nut back on, and then fish each one of the wires back up. It is quite a pain. It can be done. I have done it before. But luckily this one lifts high enough that I can get in here with my finger and I can clean these copper pads and get the corrosion off. Also, the main circuit board and the speakers in here. The speaker in here is a 8 ohm 0.25 watt speaker. Which explains why it's so quiet. It's not a very high powered speaker. Yeah, there's some discoloration. Just some buildup. Now I'm going to do the copper ring, the rotor itself. Yeah, there's even more. If you have any dielectric grease, you can smear it on here with your finger. That way it helps keep the corrosion away. Pads look good. So, let's put that over here for the moment. Let's get back to this thing. Oh no, this gear is actually cracked. It's a really small crack and it's not all the way through. It fell out and it caught the light just right. So it was meant to be. So we got 3 bad gears and a potential bad motor. So let's see what we got. Let's see what we can do. Let's see if we can get this thing fixed. Here comes the fun part, going through all the gears to try and find the right ones. I'll put a link below for the gear kit this is. This is actually 2 of the same kits mixed together. So I had extra gears. There's the potential for that one. Here's a replacement Orin gear. Now we just need to find this one. There we go. And there's the replacement gear for that. What's nice about this kit is, let's say this pulley's broke, it comes with pulleys. It's a different color, but it doesn't matter, as long as it works. But it comes with big pulleys, small pulleys, medium pulleys. So it's kind of nice about these kits. I said I'll put a link below for this kit. Again, this is 2 of them I bought and just mixed them into a single jar. It even comes with replacement spacers. These different colored things you see sitting here are the spacers that they use on, there's a white one right there. This one's slightly longer, but they use spacers on like this upper setup. So it does come with those too. You might have to put 2 of them in place because they're shorter. Sometimes you have to do slight modifications, but overall this is a decent kit. That's why I bought 2 of them, so I could ensure I have hopefully enough gears to do the repairs. Now, pushing gears on, I use a small vise to keep everything square, which is mounted on the edge of the bench over there. That's what I'm opening up right now. You can also try and push them on with your fingers, but you want to make sure you push them on square so you don't crack them. If you have spares, then do your fingers. Slide locks will work pretty good. Pliers, if you keep the angles as close to straight as possible. There's little holes in my bench right over here where stuff used to be mounted to it. Sometimes I'll put a bigger gear over the hole and then press. I've also done it where I've pressed it through a pair of open pliers like that. But for this little guy, because the knurling is at the top and I need to cut, see if it probably won't focus, those grooves into this gear, I'm going to use the clamping force of a vise. If it wants to cooperate. There we go. There it is. Make sure it's clamped all the way in. So that way it meshes with that gear like it's supposed to. There we go, it rotates. So take this gear and throw it away. Now we need to get this damaged gear off. And there's knurling right here, and there's some knurling underneath this shaft. So this guy's on there. Sometimes you have to use brute force. What I'm trying to do is tap or push down, but I can't get it to break free. It is moving. You can see it's now at the end. So I'm doing is I'm slowly prying it up by prying against the other pair of pliers here until it comes off. So if you can see the thread difference as far as what's left, this has got all sharp threads and the center of these are completely destroyed. So same thing, it's a tight fit, it's pressed. So I'm going to start it in the vise again. So now she's pressed on. And this is where I will do the double plier or a set of wire strippers, because they have a hole. Most of them have holes, as you can see all around the edge, where I can get that pin to go through the hole. So I'm going to tap the shaft down. And it's just starting to come through now. I'm going to use a pair of needle nose to hold it so I'm not smacking my hand. You see it's going through. Now I've gone all the way through and I'm hitting the bench, so I can't go any further. So I have to elevate these, and usually I'd block it up on something, but what I'm going to do is, I said I have a hole that's right here about 2 inches down, so I'm just going to move my pliers so the hole goes over the other hole, and I'm just going to tap this thing in real quick the rest of the way. So there we go. And that goes up through, and wherever I stuck the little pulley, hopefully I didn't accidentally just scoop it into my bucket, which I think I did. Yeah, I probably did. It's probably this guy right here. So don't remember any white pulleys in this kit. Just gonna set the pulley, make sure it's flat. It's almost flat. Set the spacer. You can actually use a little hammer instead of another tool. I just use a smacky thing I have lying around, and my smacky thing is another tool. So. There we go. Now I just need to take up the slack, because it wasn't this sloppy. So I just need to see how far up it is to be aligned with the other pulley, which means it needs to go down just a little bit more. Not much. or too far. So just trying to open it back up a little bit. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give the motor a little power, and I want to hear it by itself. She's a little loud, but she's also vibrating. I think the pulley is out of alignment, or the pulley is worn. But she is not pulling a lot of power, and she's running like she's supposed to. So I'm wondering if it was just wedged with the gear. The broken gears wouldn't allow it to turn. This is a higher torque motor than the standard ones you see in Lemax. There is no part number on it that I can see. Yeah, there's no part number. So let's put this thing back together. Still got to press on one more gear. Let's put this thing back together and see how she works. Now this last gear is going to pose a small issue, this one that's really cracked, and I'm going to have to drill the center out. You can see that the cracked gear has a much larger hole. The gear on the left has a 2.5 millimeter hole, I believe it is, and this is a much larger hole. So I'm going to have to drill out this gear center to match this gear's center. Let me just make sure they're the right teeth again. They are perfect. So you might have seen in one of the other videos I talked about using a small hand drill, and that's what we're going to use again. So this is a hand drill, and I already have a drill bit in it, and this drill bit is slightly smaller than the shaft, but it's a good start because we don't want to start with the biggest one first. That's how you can crack the gear. And you basically just rotate the hand drill and you just start drilling by hand. So now the hole is slightly larger. Now I just need to find a bit as big as this. I might not have one in here. I might have to go find one. This is a hand drill bit case, and this is the largest bit that comes in the hand drill bit case. Hey, which is the same size, so good. One thing I don't like about my hand drill is the collet always gets tight and gets stuck. I always have to use another tool to get it to unscrew. We'll take out the wrong size bit. And this hand drill comes with two collets that are double-ended, so you can find the right size for the one that you need. So that's the one I need. And I'll put a link below for a hand drill. I do use power drills every once in a while, and I even use hand drill electric ones. But the problem with those is the torque. If they grab at an angle, you can break the gear or cut your hand. And if I'm not doing a whole bunch of gears, I'm just doing, well, there's one, I'll probably just use a hand drill and do it by hand. And I own a couple of different hand drills. I bought a few because they have different size. Collets. So they also have different feels. This one you just spin. This one here in the bag is a different type of hand drill. This one you don't spin. This one you push, and it spins it as you push. And unless you're holding your material flat on something and you're going up and down with it, it makes it really hard to hold on to. But since I usually like to hold the gear in my hand and do it, that's why I use the one that you have to spin with hand power. Yeah, the other one you do this, and as you go up and down it bores a hole. This one you just have better control over, which is why I like this one. But it does tire down your hand. Now, if you have arthritis or carpal tunnel, this may not be fun. I know I have carpal tunnel and my hand's already hurting from this. But I'm almost through. Almost. You can also spin the gear and push carefully. There's more than one way to do this. I'm almost to the end. I just don't really want to drill a hole through my mat. Now I'm at the end. There we go. I say it wasn't all the way through. There you go. And then I keep spinning it opposite of the direction of the drill, so that way it keeps the hole clean. So this is a 3 millimeter bit. You can see that it fits on the shaft. Get that out of here. And I just need to remember which way it went. I believe it went nose first. What I'll do is I'll actually use the broken gear to remind me, so then I can press on the new gear. Yeah. Nose first. Now, this gear has a smooth nose. This gear actually has a gear or step nose. If I put this in here, that step nose may interfere with the other gear. I'm just checking. It doesn't. But if you didn't have a smooth nose gear and you went with a gear that had another gear on it, or a snip nose, you can actually take a pair of snips like this and grab 2 at a time and cut them off. So I just didn't have any in there that had the smooth nose. So that's in the garbage. So I am going to now put this in. And normally again would use the vise, but let me see if I can just tap it down with this. So now it's flush, but I need to get onto that knurled section. So again, I can do something like this with this hole and push it through. I'm going to use one of these bigger holes just to get it to start for alignment. So now it's sticking out, and now I can put it in this hole and finish tapping it in. Again, I'm going to use a pair of needle nose to hold it. Needle nose allows me 2 things. It allows me to hold it, and it allows me not to over travel. I'm almost there. 1 or 2 more. And then now it's all the way onto the knurled section. So set this all in, make sure all the gears are sitting flush where they're supposed to. So if you had to replace a whole bunch of gears, before you screw it together, make sure all your gears are sitting flush, none of them are cocked at an angle. They're all sitting in their respective places. You may have to rotate them a hair, because the last thing you want to do is put this top piece on and then have an out of alignment gear and then break it. Or break this housing, because it is just clear plastic. So now putting this on is going to be more difficult than when you took it off, because this worm gear just doesn't just go straight down. It will grab all the teeth. So you might have to rotate this top pulley a little bit just to get it to fit. Like that. I'm just now, before I screw it together, I am spinning this in my hand. You're probably like, what are you doing? I am making sure that all the pins, all the axles, are actually in their respective spots, and that I'm not forcing anything, and we're all good. Because again, I don't want to break anything. I'm supposed to fix it. Now, I did just pop apart, so I'm gonna, there we go, push it back together again. And there we go. Here's this itty bitty little screw that I have off to the side. I actually think it's to hold the torque of these 3 axle shafts near each other. So this one, when you put it in, just don't over tighten it and strip the hole. But I noticed a lot of the Mr. Christmas has this itty bitty little screw off to the side. You don't want to strip any of the holes, to be honest. If you do strip them, you can fill them with some glue, let it harden, and then cut new threads into the glue. So you can see my pulley is a hair low, which I'll fix that in a moment. The first thing I want to do is actually see if this works and spins. You can see I didn't get it in all the way. It's at an angle. Easily fixed. First things first though, let's give her some juice. I'm testing this at 4.5 volts. Now, I gotta fix this pulley. It spun for a second and then the pulley dropped. I also might need a new belt because that belt's pretty loose. So how I'm going to fix it is I'm going to use the big pliers for the shaft to pop through. I'll use these to try and tap the shaft in. Alright, I'm going to use the vise. Tapping it's not working very well. My vise has an inset for the gears, so you shouldn't have to disassemble this to reposition it. Let's find out. Almost got it. Same thing I did last time, a little bit too far. There we go. That's the only problem with the vise is I can't see the shaft completely. There we go. You can see the cam is spinning and it's engaging the micro switch like it's supposed to. Let's make sure. Yes. So this is ready to go back on top, and I'm going to solder the wires back together. Just doing some final checks on everything. I want to make sure the tolerances are right. If the tolerances aren't right, it's not going to work. Alright, let's do the reassembly. I soldering to put those black and red wires through right there. Go. Wires are in. Now one of the most difficult things is trying to get these 4 screws to line back up. You kind of have to lift and turn until you can see the holes. It looks like it's pretty close, and it's not. There is an alignment pin. There's 2 of them, but the 2 alignment pins can fit in 4 different positions, so it's just finding the correct 2. There we go. I think that's good. All right. When working on these, you just have to have a little patience. Oh, I got the alignment pins off. Hold on. There we go. And last one, good to go. Get the soldering iron warming up. Before I screw the top on completely, I'm going to put a little dielectric grease on those contacts on the bottom. I said all I'm going to do is I'm going to squirt it on my finger. The stuff I got, as I mentioned in the past, comes in these little packets. It's a generic high voltage dielectric grease. And I'm going to put my finger in here. And I'm going to try and coat everything. You can also use a cotton swab and do it, or you can take the bottom nut out, which I absolutely despise doing because I've done it once and it's annoying to put it back together. But you have to do what you have to do if you want to fix it. Sure, when you apply this, that you don't apply so much that it drips onto the circuit board. So make sure that you smooth it out. I'm not grinding any gears by doing this because I have it lifted off of the bottom, so that big gear is not touching anything. Only when this is seated all the way down does that big gear touch anything. There we go. If my memory serves me, the inner is negative and the outer is positive. But because I talked about that memory thing, I took a picture, and I'm going to quickly check that picture. Yes, the inner ring is negative and the outer ring is positive. So I'm going to just tip this a hair so I can see it better. Just adding some new solder so it solders better. And I'm going to pre-tin these. I got to pre-tin them all, so I might as well just do them all at the same time. push some of the excess back down inside. I'm gonna have to fire up the glue gun, it looks like, too. Get these re-adhered right where they had them off to the side. So the hot glue is now warming up, and once it's warmed up, I'm going to put some glue there to hold it, let it sit, and then drop this back on, put this back on, solder all the wires, and give it a test whirl. I'll be back in a moment once this thing is done getting warm and I get this back on. Save some time so the video is not 2 hours long. Be right back. Alright, I put the top back on, just fired it up. All the lights are on, and the airplanes are swinging in and out like they're supposed to. So, basically the reassembly is the same as this assembly, but backwards. So you need to take, feed the wires through, put the nut on, solder the wires back on, tighten the nut, don't forget to do that. Make sure then pull the wires through. I already pulled them through, that's why they're not up. I haven't put the cork back in, as you can tell, it's right there. Because it's actually a sticky cork, and the sticky is gone, so I'm going to have to hot glue it. And you can see it kept running for a couple seconds before it turned off. So now I just need to put the cap back on. I'm not a big fan of how much slop is in this belt. You can see how it's bowed. I'm thinking I'm going to try and find a new belt for this before I put the cap back on. And then I'll film it in the low light so you can see it with its lights and stuff. So, bear with me for a few moments. I'm going to get a belt, put it back together, glue this on, turn off all the lights, and film her completely back and fully functional. So I'll be back in just a moment. I wanted to show you reassembled. Make sure that you got the 3 springs in. The springs are tapered, one end's fatter than the other. Make sure the fatter part is on the bottom of all 3. When you put this cap on, the spacing between these 2 is larger than the spacing here. It's not a perfect triangle, so this plate only goes on one way. This is the same way. It's got a flat spot like the shaft did. It just slides on one way. You can't put it on backwards. If you try and put anything on backwards, it's not going to fit. So they make it somewhat easy. I soldered the wires back on. I consulted my picture, so I know that the green marker one goes here, and then the white, the black, and the red. I hot glued these wires out of the way so they don't interfere with this biplane right here or get caught on this plate when it moves up and down. So yeah, it's basically the same thing I took off, just reversed. Figured it'd save you some time instead of having a super long video regarding it. So I'm going to go look for a new belt, put the cap back on, and fire it up in low light so we can see what this thing looks like. Be back in just another moment. Okay, here's a top shot of it working. And we're going to switch to a side shot so you can see it a little bit better. You see those LEDs are nice and bright on the camera, but they're not overly bright in person. There you go.
Airplanes are moving in and out just like they're supposed to. And when we flip the switch, I turned it off right when it was supposed to turn off. That's amazing. That's why I turn it back on, so you can see that it resets. And there's the reset. There we go. There is the World's Fair air biplane ride. Thanks for watching. Till the next one.